Salam and peace, everyone. Thank you for tuning in to another episode of My Voice's Race Against Racism. My Voice is a platform for the youth and by the youth. I'm your co host, Mariam Khan.
And I am Maria Mendes, and today we are talking about opportunities for Black people. Bilal and Jibreel Moore from the popular Canadian music group Mustaqim. Mustaqim is a contemporary nasheed duo that includes brothers Jibreel and Bilal Moore. The two have been composing, writing, and producing their own original songs for the past 3 years as a duo. They have recently released their second album titled Jam Team. Just allow me to express myself. The duo got their first start competing RS talent show with their oldest brother. They also opened up for Zayn on his Canadian tour in 2013. Mustaqim later went on to finish in the last 16 in the Awakening Talent Contest. Since then, they have performed all around Ontario, Canada, and also in the US. I'm so excited to have you both on our show today.
Thank you. Thank you for having us.
Welcome.
I was looking through some of the older issues of My Voice magazine and realized that you, Jibril, were on the cover of one of the issues, and the feature article talking about supporting Muslim businesses was written by you. That's exciting. You also mentioned that was directed towards supporting Muslim businesses, but that I think is also relevant for this discussion. You wrote, "Are we not just to sit on our prayer mats and focus on akhirah? I am afraid not. Even though this wasn't meant to talk about what is going on now, I think it sends a message to people that you can't just pray and wait for something to happen, but pray, of course, but also put in action, which is needed now. This is a very powerful message in both contexts and shows you have a gift with words. Do you still write?"
So that was I like that experience of like writing that article and stuff. It opened my eyes to a lot in terms of what I learned while writing it, and I do believe that it's a great point that you made where you could still use that that quote and apply it to today's situation, because I feel like a lot of people in the religious communities and Muslims specifically kind of use religion as almost an excuse to, they say, okay, well, I only care about the akhirah, right? I just care about getting into the Jannah and stuff, and kind of shy away from talking about topics and stuff that affect people right now, right? And Islam isn't like that. It's a balance of both, where the end goal is obviously the akhirah, but you don't ignore what goes on in front of you, right? And what happens in real life. So it's good to kind of to be present, but not let it distract you from the end goal. There's a difference, and so I feel like writing that article and that whole experience was great. And I do still write occasionally, just not anything to that extent anymore, but every now and then. And I also kind of realized during the beginning that what I like to do in terms of writing, I kind of took that same basic skill set and put it into songwriting instead. And I found that was more kind of my direction. Because a lot of times it's essentially the same thing, where with a song you start off with kind of like a thesis statement, which would be the title, and then you expand upon it, right, in a certain amount of verses, whereas an article would be a certain amount of paragraphs. And it's essentially kind of the same thing. You want your message to be concise and packaged correctly, no grammar mistakes, all the same things. So that was a fun experience, fun time. And I like the cover photo. Just brought back memories.
You look so young, holy cow.
I know, right? It's like,
No, I think it's really cool. I think for everyone to find their creative passion, and for some people it's writing, and then I think it was cool how you were able to translate your writing into writing music. That's really cool. I wanted to know, when initially the videos and the traumatic images surfaced of George Floyd's murder, what were your guys' initial reactions? Because I'm sure that must have been a very traumatic experience, but I just wanted to know how did you initially react to that?
As bad as it sounds, my first reaction wasn't that shocked, because a lot of people don't know this has been happening for years. There's been videos of police brutality showing up on our Twitter timeline and on the internet for literally years now. So a lot of people are jaded at this point. A lot of Black people are jaded at this point. But it's great that this finally other people have started to wake up to what's going on. But yeah, it can be a lot every time one does come up, and it does take a toll on your mental health, and like you have to take a break every once in a while. But again, there's a lot of people that are like so shocked and checking up on their Black friends or whatever, like, oh, are you okay, and stuff like that. And I'm like, thank you, and it's great that you guys are waking up now, but like this has been going on for so long. Like it's nothing new. It really isn't.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, just kind of expand upon that point where Bilal was saying that it affects your mental health, because like personally for me, and you know, I'm sure for him as well, there's this kind of conflict between wanting to stay informed and wanting to kind of take a break for your mental health, because like, you know, no matter how many times you see it, it still affects you in some way, right? So most of us are kind of used to it by now, but not used to it in a sense where it doesn't affect us. It's just, it's not the same reaction that it was the first time, and it's slowly kind of chipping away at you as more and more pop up, right? And I feel like this time, like Bilal said, what's good is that other people are now starting to see it and kind of wake up to these things, because a lot of us, as like, you know, Black youth, a lot of what you're exposed to in the media when it comes to Black people is trauma based, right? So a lot of the movies are about slavery or breaking out of slavery, and you know, a lot of the TV shows and same thing, the music and the movies are gang violence, right? It's very, very rare that you see a Black cast in a movie that is not centered around some type of Black trauma, right? And that's why like the movie Black Panther a couple years ago was so awesome, because we finally got a movie where they weren't suffering like that, right? It was Black people in a positive light, and not necessarily that it has to be Black people always as the good guys. It's Black people in dynamic situations, right? So where you can see with white people and with other races sometimes, not as much though, but with white people you get to see them in all different lights, right? So you get to see them as the villain, you get to see them as the hero and all this stuff like that. You get to see them as the sidekick, but it never kind of taints the image of the race itself, right? But with Black people, the way in which we are portrayed in the media often has a very real effect on how people treat us in real life, right? So it all ties back into a little circle. So
yeah, no, I definitely think there has been like a desensitization that has occurred over time. And like what you were saying, with like a lot of times people have pointed this out, where in movies, even if they're cartoon movies, the villain will always be darker, or there's like this constant, and it's almost like brainwashing, and it's happening so frequently, but people are not noticing. And I think especially in this point in time where the videos have come out, and like both of you were saying, it's unfortunate that it wasn't shocking, especially I think to the Black community, because I mean, now it's just getting filmed, and people have been seeing this for a while now. So it's sad, but I think, it needs to be highlighted that this has been going on, and it's not a huge shock to anyone.
Exactly. People have been dying, and they've been taking videos of it over and over again, and we're seeing that. And so for now, for us, it's just like, okay, another one. But for other people, I'm glad they're seeing that this is happening and that they're trying to make a change, and that we're seeing that with the police officers who did kill George Floyd and the ones who witnessed it, and how they are being charged for murder now because people have spoke up about it. And we're also seeing that with Black Panther and other movies, thankfully, we're showing a diverse cast. They're showing Black people in a better light and a good light, which is what we need and what we're getting, thankfully. So I know you all have. What parts of America have you performed in? What has your experience been performing here in America?
So we actually performed in America one time, but we were planning on going again, inshallah, when this is all over. So we performed in Flint, Michigan, and it was interesting because that was before the water crisis kind of started there. So this was in I think summer 2014, I believe. Yeah, a while ago. And it's interesting living in Toronto, because Toronto isn't like the rest of Canada. A lot the rest of Canada views it as just America light. You know what I'm saying? And in Toronto, though, when you how we view the states, it's almost like this. I don't know. It's almost like a caricature of what we see in our own city, right? It's just everything to the extreme. So when we performed in the States and we were driving through some of like the gated communities and like the lower income areas in Detroit to get to Flint, it was interesting because you kind of see what has been depicted on the media, like in media, in real life, and it's just kind of it's an interesting thing because it looks the same but it's different. And we also visited New York last summer, and it was a similar experience. And I feel like in Canada, specifically in Toronto, we have issues with police. We still have issues with racism, but it is not to the same extent. It is again like a lighter version of what you experience there, right? So the Black community in Toronto has I would say a different experience with the Black community in the United States. So for example, a lot of the racism that the Black community experiences in Toronto is not from white people. Actually, it comes from other ethnic groups who are like would be considered minorities and stuff. But it's a mix of the two. Whereas a lot of the times in the States, they paint it as a complete black versus white kind of thing, and the Latinos are in there somewhere, but it's just black versus white. You know what I'm saying? And so I find it interesting when a lot of people in Toronto kind of post about, oh yes, we need to stop the white man and all that stuff. I'm just thinking like, the white man isn't the only issue here. That you know what I mean? And it's it's interesting. It's an interesting comparison between the two.
I think. Yeah. I mean, this is my assumption because when the few times I have been to Toronto, I think there is a huge population of what would be considered a minority here, like South Asians. Yeah. And just like I think there is just more. We're almost to the point where you can't say that it is a minority at that point because like you could be like driving down the street, you'll see tons of people with wearing hijabs, all sorts of like different ethnicities, and I think maybe because of that, there is sort of now the distinction is not between black and white, but instead it's between everyone else and then the black community because and then that's what a lot of times people do bring up is like, oh, we're minorities too, so we can't really be racist because we're a minority. But in reality, it's like if you're not standing up enough, then I mean you can keep pulling your card of we deal with racism too, but it's not the same thing. And that's what I kind of wanted to ask you next was have you felt that there has been an adequate ethnicities because I mean, some people have said, and on our previous episodes, that their community is really coming together and they're seeing significant change happening. But have you felt that in Canada that the different communities are coming together to stand up for the Black community?
Yes, for the most part, but then like I feel like we've gotten everyone's attention and everyone's speaking up on it now, and everyone's was there at the start. But now it's a matter of, will you stick with it now that the trend's not here anymore?
Yeah.
So if we see people stay with the movement and stay helping us and stay then yes. But if everyone hops off the hype train, then it will all
I've heard a lot of people talking about that where like, for the past week, maybe week and a half, there was this whole, like you were saying, hype. It's sad to call it hype, but that's what it was for some people. That everyone was really, posting on their stories and really into it. And then now everyone is back to like, doing their usual, putting streaks, like all that stuff is like back to where it was.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, because like, I know people like personally, and I know people that felt pressured to post something about it because everyone else was doing it and they thought people would look at them in a negative light if they didn't. But I'm sitting here like, okay, but you're not doing it because you actually believe in the cause. You're just doing it because you feel pressured by society and they just want to be on the right side of history or something, right? But
like, no, I saw a post and it was like, if you feel pressured to be posting something right now, that's an issue in itself. Like you need to figure that out before you go and advocate and look like a really good person online.
Yeah, you have to feel it in your heart. You have to actually do it.
Yeah, for sure.
So as a Black Muslim who lives in an area with predominantly South Asians, people are surprised that I'm Black and Muslim, and they think they don't know that that can be a thing. So I was just wondering, have you had any experiences question that you're Black and Muslim? And if so, what have you said to them in response?
So that happens all the time. It's interesting because when you talk about privilege, right? With like white privilege, where because of how you look, people never assume certain things about you, right? So myself and Bilal and a lot of Muslim guys and specifically Black Muslim men experience a kind of privilege when it comes to Islamophobia, where nobody ever assumes we're Muslim, right?
Yeah.
Like no matter what. And it's interesting because, you know, I've been in a lot of situations where people will be directly Islamophobic to my friend and not me, because they never assume I'm Muslim. And it's that also kind of happens in the reverse in the Muslim community, where, for example, there was one time where I was performing at a convention and, you know, performing your nasheeds, talking about Allah, the Prophet, all of that stuff. And I come backstage and a brother comes up to me and he's like, "Salam, brother, are you Muslim?" And I'm like, I just was up there talking, like singing nasheeds for the past 30 minutes and you're gonna ask me if I'm Muslim or not. Like, it's this.
No, that
it's
was just for
different
fun,
thing,
you know.
right?
It's a hobby, like.
Yeah, like it's hilarious because, you know, it doesn't compute, and a lot of people don't realize that Black Muslims are the majority of the Muslims in North America, right? And, you know, it's just this almost kind of, it's been co-opted by Arab and Asian minority groups in Toronto specifically as well, that Islam is almost synonymous with their cultures, right? And so a lot of the times, one issue that we face was when we come and we want to perform hip hop and R&B music and have our Islamic spin on it, it's seen as negative when that's just our cultural music, right? But then when other people want to come and do their cultural music that, you know, has the same, you can have that music seen in a negative light or you can have it seen in a positive light. It depends on what the intention of the artist is, right? But there's still this extra bit of backlash that we always face because we do hip hop and R&B music, right?
No, I definitely,
yeah, and that comes from the fact that there's never a connection between Black and Muslim. The only connection that people have is Bilal, and that's it, right? And that's just the only one.
They don't know anyone else. Always run to him.
Else, right? It's sad. Yeah.
No, and I think that's so sad because you see it all the time where, like you were giving the example of nasheed, like if something is turned into like a naat, which is like a South Asian form of like either praising the Prophet, peace be upon him, like that's all good, and you know that'll be performed everywhere and it's okay, it doesn't matter. And then people always want to pull the card, well, that has music in it. There's never any kind of those issues with that type of music, but then as soon as it's like hip hop or like more fast paced and it's like, oh, this has music, oh, we can't play this in front of it, like all that stuff then starts
Double
to come into play. And it's so sad because why is there not this connection where, like, and we've created this connection with everything else. Like, you can be a different race and you're still Muslim, but for some reason that connection is yet to be made for this. And the worst part is because the Black community is so passionate about every other community and they stand up for everyone. Like, when it comes to Muslims and what's happening in Palestine and China, they're always like on the front line and they're always, you know, speaking up for everyone else's rights. And then when, you know, racism comes up and when inequalities come up, then like everyone is just silent and it's like, oh, that's not really my thing.
Exactly.
You know?
Yeah.
Their problem. They can fix it on their own.
Yeah, it's because African Americans are at the bottom of the barrel in like society, and no one likes to look down.
Yep. Yeah. So let's go back to the opportunities now. As singers and Black singers at that, have you all been given many opportunities and have people opened doors for you when you were trying to become popular, or do you feel that was not the case?
I go, Jibreel.
Oh yeah, sure. Okay. So it's a little bit of both because it's interesting, right? In the community that we live in, so in Toronto, there is not a large African American population, right? And so a lot of the times in Muslim events and stuff like that, we are the token Black people in almost every scenario that we're in, So a lot of opportunities have actually been given to us because they want to fill their representation quota.
Yeah, the diversity checkbox.
Exactly,
Yes.
exactly. So you can tell most of the time that it's not very genuine and they just need you there for the image, right? So a lot of opportunities have actually been given to us because of that. On the flip side, though, it's very evident that in a lot of these communities, let's say the Arab community, where they tend to want, and it's human nature, but you tend to want people that reflect your own image, right? So when you're trying to come into a community that doesn't really accept and actually frowns upon the image of you as being a black guy with dreads and you're doing your hip hop music and whatever, there's a lot of resistance that comes with that. And we've seen cases, a lot of cases, where Pakistani hip hop artists will just see a lot more opportunities, a lot more numbers in less amount of time than us, simply because the community all of a sudden accepts them because, oh, well, it's familiar now, right? And
yeah, or they look like us.
Yeah, and it fits more with the image. And same thing with the Arab community. And oftentimes, we'll wonder and be like, well, if we weren't black, would we get farther? Because the standard for black people, especially when it comes to hip hop and R&B and stuff like that, is that, oh, you can sing well, you can rap well, that's to be expected because you're black, obviously, right? So it's like you have to get their attention, you have to be excellent, right? There's absolutely no space for mediocrity for black people in this kind of thing, right? That's the only way you're gonna get their respect. So it's a little bit of both.
Yeah, and going off of that, like, I think a lot of times there's this stereotype that the only way the black community can be successful is if they go into sports, primarily basketball, and then if they do like R&B or that like certain genres of music. And so I think, like, do you think that stereotype, how has that played out for you guys?
I mean, it's referenced a lot, like in terms of like, if I tell people like, yeah, I'm a rapper, they're like, well, of course.
Yeah.
What else would you be? A basketball player?
And one of my like best friends, he's like a student athlete going into soccer or stuff like that. And it's the same thing where he's like, yeah, I play sports. And they're like, duh, like what else you gonna do? But then they don't actually expect you to be able to do anything else. So the second I say something intelligent or like succeed in something else that isn't those two categories, they're like, wow, and confused or whatever and stuff like that, right? And say, we don't play basketball, we suck at basketball. So whenever we play basketball with our friends and we suck, they're like, wow, like you can't play basketball, bro, like you're black, come on. And I'm just like, well, that's not what I was like, that's not what we did.
And
there's no room to be anything different than what they think you are. There's no room to like,
and to kind of like expand on that point, there a lot of black people kind of think that playing into stereotypes that aren't negative is inherently wrong, right? So then you have like this one thing that was happened with me is that I refuse to play basketball with people. I refuse to get better at basketball. I don't want to do it because it's a stereotype that you fit in, right? I've conditioned myself to not like watermelon because every time I eat a watermelon, everyone's like, "Oh, yep, the black man loves a watermelon," like clockwork, right? And so it's kind of sad because you shouldn't have to pigeonhole yourself like that and prevent yourself from doing whatever it is that you want simply because of what other people will think, right? And so being a musician, yes, you do get a lot of that kind of pressure to have something else going on for yourself, right? So me, I'm in third year business in Ryerson, and when I tell people that, also while being a professional musician, they're like, "Oh wow, I would never have expected that from you." Oh, okay, this whatever. And it's like, just because you are a musician, just because you're an athlete, does not mean you aren't intelligent. There are many athletes, many artists who are amongst the most intelligent people in the world, because at the end of the day, it still takes skill. It's still something there's respect in the craft that you have, right? And I just don't like to see in the black community where a lot of parents will kill their kids desire to be an artist or an athlete simply because it plays into the stereotype. And to me, what should be happening instead is not necessarily killing the desire to play into the stereotype, but letting Black children and Black youth know that there are opportunities elsewhere.
They're
right?
more than
You
just a
don't-
stereotype.
Yes, they're more. So you don't have to be an athlete. You do not have to be this. That's not required of you simply because you are Black, right? So, you know, a lot of times people will make fun of somebody like Black people are like, it's incredible. Where sometimes if you read, like you're just reading books, right? People be like, yo, this guy's reading? What? Yo, like, what is this guy? He's like, why are you reading, bro? Like, what's wrong? What's wrong with you? And it's like, why is that? If you
Yeah.
have a proper vocabulary and you know you speak with eloquence and stuff, why are you talking white? Why are you
Yeah, why
speaking
is that
like a
look
white
down?
man?
Yeah.
What's up with that, right? Why is eloquence and an expanded vocabulary an inherently white trait? What does that have to do with whiteness? You know,
Part of the problem.
And
people-
the worst
exactly.
part about
So-
all of
White
that
people.
is that most of that doesn't even come from white people themselves being
Exactly.
like, why are you acting white, or Black people saying, why are you acting white? It comes from like the South Asians or the Arabs or other people of color that think
And I think, yeah.
that we
Yeah,
have
very
to be the stereotype to being like, why are you acting white? Why are you acting white? And they'll say all this stuff. And personally, I've become a victim of that a lot because I'm a nerd, as you'd call them. I play video games, watch anime or whatever and stuff like that, right? So people would be like, oh, Bilal, you're so white, Bilal, you're so white, stuff like that. And it causes identity issues within yourself because you're like, well, what am I really if I'm not thing? Because you could say I'm white, but you don't treat me like I'm white. You still treat me like I'm Black. So like, what the hell am I?
Yeah, no, and I think a lot of times, I know especially because like me and Mariam both live in a very predominantly South Asian community, and a lot of the time I think especially like with guys, South Asian guys try so hard to, you know, like completely take the Black culture with them, but then when they see their friends doing anything that's not part of the stereotype, it's like what you guys were saying, we're like, oh, why are you trying to be white? Why are you so whitewashed? Like,
Just act like a Black person. What are you doing?
yeah.
Yeah.
But then they'll look down upon you if you do act like a Black
you-
person.
yeah.
So
Like,
then
what do you want? Like, choose.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think this was a really fruitful discussion, and I think we touched on a lot of different things that I didn't even know about before. And I think these are things that need to be discussed because when these stereotypes are constantly played into and people don't think they're doing harm by either playing into it or trying really hard not to be a part of it, it does a lot of damage that, like Bilal was saying, you know, you don't realize, like, what side am I on? What am I supposed to be? So I think it was really interesting, you know, to have this discussion with you guys. I would like to thank you guys again for coming on today.
No problem.
Yeah, and thanks to everyone who tuned in. If you enjoyed this episode, make sure you share it. And you could follow Mustaqim at official Mustaqim and follow My Voice at My Voice Canada on our social media. Thank you.
Assalamualaikum.
Like,
Bye, guys.